Tell me, when was the last time Homelander appeared on the screen and you as an audience did not break a sweat out of anxiety, questioning what this psychopath is going to do next? Who is he going to kill? How is he going to kill? Will he laser the brains out of the other character or will he rip him apart? These kinds of agonizing questions crawling in our minds show us how sadistic Homelander's character actually is. A person with godlike abilities who can
do whatever the fuck I want.
He is a kind of overpowered villain who can't be defeated or killed nor can be controlled. Everyone around him is on the mercy of his brutal and savage actions, making them realize their helplessness and feebleness against this monster who owns the fate of their lives. His subtle manipulations, deceiving friendly behaviors accompanied by a hideous and grim smile with his victim as if a beast playing with his prey before ripping it apart, and overly uncertain and impulsive behavior makes him an extremely terrifying and scary villain we have seen in a very long time. The makers of The Boys have done a spectacular job with the writing of Homelander's character, and obviously the extremely talented Anthony Starr for putting life in this terrifying psychopath. They have obviously achieved in portraying and creating one of the greatest villains in the superhero genre. And the fact is that Homelander has achieved this title not because of the tremendous powers he owns in himself, because this kind of power is actually common in most of the superhero villains. His character has achieved this praise because of the intricately written and portrayed human side of his psyche based on the reality of the world we all live in. It is in actuality a portrayal of our society who has since their establishment has craved for a godlike messiah or a superhero who would come to save them from the evil that lurks within their realms. And one condition has always been common within this psyche of humanity, the prejudice of believing that the messiah or the superhero will be a good person, the righteous one and the savior of all, who would walk the thin and banished line of justice and morality. But Homelander is like,
what the fuck is this piece of shit?
in simpler terms, he is totally opposite of what the saviors are considered to be by the humankind. He is a corrupted human, a human with a very disturbing childhood, violent behavior, manipulative and pathological lying, and narcissistic attitude packaged with godlike powers. It is a story where a very bad person gets his hand on the world-destructing powers, a scenario where
Shit just got real.
it is true that most of the humans in our real world, if turned into a superhero tomorrow, will be terrible in doing their jobs. Some of them will definitely become violent criminals, but I'm not sure how many of them will turn out to be actually like Homelander. Most probably the potential psychopaths and the sociopaths who live within our society and maybe even somewhere next to us. Overall, what I'm trying to say is the human side of Homelander has many flaws. If we even ignore his superpowers for a second and just focus on his personality and psyche, all we will be left with is a narcissistic sociopath who constantly asserts his dominance by bullying and manipulating others. Behind his wide fake smile, he terrifies and traumatizes anyone at any moment of time. He does not feel empathy towards any other being. Rather, he is more focused on justifying his ego and is extremely obsessed with maintaining his authority more than anything else in the world. By hook or by crook, by manipulation or by violence, or even by selling his own soul and masquerading as a pitiful savior, he is ready to stoop down and exert himself for keeping his authority, pride and power in its place. Despite hating humanity, he still craves for the acceptance and validation of the world around him. The important question is, why is he like this? Why he craves for this validation? Why don't he feel empathy towards others? Why doesn't he even flinch a bit even after brutally killing someone? Is it just his traumatic past that has made him this kind of monster? Or is it all a part of a big plan? Or is it something even more than that? Something deeper in his psyche, which regularly comes to the surface in the form of his vulnerabilities. Let's understand Homelander and his psychology by analyzing his life piece by piece right from the starting of his life, and also the consequences of his existence and actions which can be reflected back in our own real world. Homelander was born, or to be more precise, created in Vought's lab using the DNA of Soldier Boy. Unlike the other soups who were injected by compound V during their infancy, Homelander was a superhuman by birth because of his father's genetics. As a kid, he was surrounded and experimented as a lab rat by a team of scientists led by his controversial father figure Jonah Vogelbaum. Homelander was originally named John by the scientists before he was marketed as Homelander as an asset for Vought International. The reason behind the creation of Homelander by Vought International was simple: money and power. By creating one of the most powerful superhero in the history of mankind, Vought International wanted to control and dominate the superhero market of the world and create one of the most powerful defense corporations for the United States. But for now, let's just stick to the story of Homelander. Homelander was aimed to be created someone who was indestructible. Even nukes would not kill him. Someone with a capability of ranged weapon and with a power of light speed even greater than that of fighter jets. These characteristics would make him one of the most powerful super soldier capable of even annihilating a country on his own. To achieve such level of standards, Homelander was subjected to extremely traumatic physical and mental experiments, tortures and surgeries as a kid, like being burnt alive in an oven, thrown inside a boiling water tank, and even forcefully made to fight strong Vought guards who would thrash him brutally. All of these cruel experiments were done as a test for his indestructible durability. Being raised in lab devoided him of a natural upbringing. He had no mother, father or siblings, nor any friends or relatives, no social life, no exposure to the outside world and no human interactions. His knowledge about the world was achieved only through attending classes by a tutor inside the lab. Such a hostile and unnatural environment ripped off his normal human emotions and empathy, leaving him unable to form any natural connections with other human beings or even understand the meaning of emotions at the first place. What scientists knew that this form of upbringing can make John a dangerous sociopath, can make him dangerous for their team, and they even might lose control on him in the future. So they engineered and developed a psychological weakness in Homelander's mind. This weakness was the natural urge of validation, praise, and acceptance from the others, the only emotion he ever felt inside those walls of Vought lab. Some of the world's best psychologists were hired by Vought to program this emotion in him. This vulnerability and deep urge for validation and acceptance made Homelander obedient towards his creators. He became obsessed by the thought of him being the superior and special entity among the humans and took careful measures to never disappoint them. This deeply etched emotion inside his mind made him an addictive seeker for acceptance and approval from humans. When Homelander was ready for his public appearance, Vought superiors created a premium superhero group known as the Seven, with Homelander as its face and leader. They advertised this group as one of the most elite and strongest coalition of 7 superheroes for America. They also added an entertainment media in this corporation to further strengthen their propaganda in people's mind with glamorous high-budget movies, shows and merchandises aiming to make these 7 superheroes powerful personalities by targeting the culture of American people's obsession with celebrities. Madeline Stillwell, one of the creators of Homelander, was responsible for keeping him in control and loyal for Vought. While growing up, Homelander never had a caring mother-like figure in his life. He only had a somewhat father-like figure in the form of Jonah Vogelbaum. So he developed his own kind of a very bizarre and twisted yet caring relationship with her. Stillwell knew that Homelander cared for her, and his immature man-child mind saw her as someone who could fill the void of the motherly care he never got in his childhood. The same engineered vulnerability of wanting to be loved and approved by someone. She knew that he was also sexually attracted to her, so she abused this weakness to control him and grow Vought's power and influence in America through his capabilities. But this manipulation does not last too long for Stillwell. The unhinged Homelander she and the other Vought superiors always feared was already on the rise right from season 1 of the show. Her fabricated motherly care for him fell short against his narcissism. Homelander's extreme narcissism is shown to us in the form of his jealousy with Stillwell's infant. This shows how immature he is when it comes to understanding the human emotions and empathies. Finally, he finds out that Stillwell lied to him about his son Ryan and his mother Becca, and this leads us to the final showdown of Homelander's diabolical nature. His killing of Madeline, despite being in a twisted relationship with her, concludes how impulsive, sadistic, terrifying and extreme narcissist he is as a person. Every rare relationship he has ever had, whether it is with Madeline, Stormfront, Maeve or currently with Firecracker, in his mind it has always been about him. The conditions and scenarios of his other half does not matter to him at all. For him, it is most important that he gets all the benefits from his attachments, and as long as those benefits last, he will nurture the relationship. But these important relationships also expose the human side of his characteristics. Despite keeping his relationships strictly about benefiting his own emotions, his care for Madeline before her betrayal, his care for Stormfront before her death, his moments of spending family time with his son son Ryan and his mother Becca, and even trying to create a family for himself when he finds out that Soldier Boy was his father, shows that deep inside he is still able to feel empathy for some selective people and situations he is subjected to. The situations which shelter him from his loneliness and the traumatic past he had as a kid. This contrasting personality and the constant battle between his human side and the monster side is shown repeatedly through the mirror scenes. These mirror scenes reveal all his inner selves, which reflect the fact that he not just craves deeply to be loved by someone, but he also becomes very sensitive emotionally in the time of trouble or challenges. He fears the fact that if he is unable to deal with his problems, he will be exposed to the world about who he truly is, a fraud and a disappointment to the puny humans around him. But his dominant psychopathic nature understands and sees these human emotions as a weakness and threat to his identity, and hence wants them to be uprooted from within. This resistance towards these natural human emotions is not just a consequence of his disturbed past which messed up his mind as a kid, but these repulsive thoughts are also due to his strong belief of not considering himself a human, and therefore he lives in a constant pressure to justify his godly personality, to make others as well as to himself believe that he is not a disappointment but a hope for the whole world, that he is the example of perfectness and authority. He is the personification of America and its greatness and power. This ridiculous pressure of being the most powerful and the pursuit of its constant justification rounds him every single day of his life. This fascist mindset and his prejudice of believing himself as a god makes him justify his fact that humans are low life and are no more than toys for his amusement. Just like a child who plays with his toys in whatever way he is pleased without considering its durability and safety. Similarly, his man-child-like personality regards humans as a source of his amusements. From our perspective, whenever he kills someone without any regard for their life, he is a brutal psychopathic murderer. But from his perspective, he is just playing with his puny and fragile little toys, and hence killing a human for him is just like breaking a toy from his vast collection. So whenever he notices that his godlike life is being controlled by the low-life humans, he feels utterly disrespected and outraged. His psychopathic brain does not like this situation and feels that he is being controlled by them through his weakness of wanting to be validated and accepted. Hence he wants the complete eradication of any human emotions left inside of him, the emotions which make him weak and fearful against the humans. These helpless situations make him impulsive, and it is this impulsive behavior that makes him extremely dangerous and an outstanding villain. Even you as an audience fear this very impulsivity of Homelander through your screens. Despite being a highly groomed and trained manipulative fraud for most of the screen time and asserting dominance on others to keep himself constantly at the top of the chain for power and control, his impulsive behavior constantly sabotages this dominance and superiority. For most of the time, these impulsive actions are small and trivial, which satisfies his violent nature. But sometimes this same impulsive behavior becomes so uncontrolled that he himself is not able to contain it.
I'm not just like the rest of you. I'm stronger. I'm smarter. I'm better. I am better.
And snaps to do something extremely stupid without worrying about the consequences.
Wait, you think I didn't think of that? Of course I thought of that.
Or even turn things extremely violent. One of the famous and latest examples of his violent impulsive behavior can also be seen in season 4, where he goes back to the same lab where he was experimentally raised to become Homelander. His killing of all the scientists inside the lab as an act of uprooting his humanity was out of pure impulsiveness, which stemmed from his frustration about his mortality and midlife crisis, disputes with Starlight campaigners who hate him and call him a fascist, and further on confronting his son Ryan's bias towards Billy Butcher. All these events were a lot to malfunction the unstable psyche of someone like Homelander, and as expected, he is internally imploded. His mind could not comprehend these challenging situations, and hence to relieve himself from his helplessness, his immature mind resolved the solution which has always been the easiest for him, which is to kill someone. Of course, he won't be able to uproot his humanity by killing these scientists. He cannot change his past and cannot change what they had made out of him. But this sadistic act by him was actually like a warning for the audience for the final season, showcasing us the extent of savagery Homelander can go if things do not go his way, if he loses and has a breakdown. In the end, Homelander is a rare villain character whose story has been showcased to us on a very deeper and intricate level. Not very often in entertainment media, we see such detailed and personal story of an antagonist. And it is because of this personal approach towards characterization we are able to see a lot of parallels with our own world, the real world. His traumatic past is a sad reality of millions of children around the world who are banished from a normal loving childhood and are subjected to all form of atrocities and injustices. How can these little children, when they grow up, will see the world they were subjected to? Will they be able to see and feel the love, kindness and compassion the privileged elites speak and dream about? Or will they see the world through the same prejudice and twisted ideologies they were subjected to? Homelander is an example of how monsters are not born but are made by the selfish and cruel world around us. Such traumas and lack of love create a huge void in the minds of such people which bother them and haunt them for the rest of their lives. And since the damage has been done, now they have a very twisted idea of love, compassion and empathy. So they sought disturbing and non-social ways to fill this void. And the most common part to fill it is through power and authority. This is the reason why dominance, superiority and validation are so intoxicating to people like these, and here in the case of Homelander. And therefore if he is not able to feed and satisfy that unstable zone of his mind, he breaks down, snaps and ends things up with violence. As an extremely powerful yet flawed character, Homelander also exposes the dark fallacies about the structure of our own society, which most of us choose to ignore, but nevertheless its consequences still affect us. During the end of season 3, after publicly killing a liberal, he notices that his acceptance and validation has reached to a point where he no longer needs to constantly make efforts to gain it. The people have already accepted him as the champion and spirit of America. So now his hunger for authority creates a new goal for itself, a situation where he would establish an authoritarian country with himself as the center of all the power, which would result in an effortless acceptance, validation and power for him over the people across the country. He is now almost on the verge of achieving the goal for which he was created inside Vought's lab in the first place. All of Vought's corporate power, money and might, and Homelander's charming, charismatic and manipulative skills have successfully established their propaganda and had brainwashed a large number of people of the country. And it is this part of Homelander's story that strikes very similar to the game of world politics that is played by the powerful politicians and the wealthy elites on the expense of the naive and innocent people of their country by using them as their pawns for gaining and holding power. Just like Homelander and Vought, real-life politicians and business tycoons use all their power to establish their set of propaganda, create tension, hatred and chaos within the society, divide the people and then try to showcase themselves as the beacon of hope and savior of all. But at the end of the day, all they care about is their authority, power and control over the people and the resources. Just like Homelander and Vought, they don't give a shit about the people who voted or may vote for them. Their only job is to somehow continue this chaos and hatred within the society and make people emotional and lost within this chaos as long as they can. Power is an intoxicating drug for humans, and therefore a character like Homelander, though fictional, is probably a warning to our own world, as we don't know how unknowingly as a society we are being responsible for not just producing monsters and evils every here and now, but are also blindly creating steps for them towards our own destruction and sufferings. We have to understand that people like Homelander are not just some other powerful villain or antagonist who already knew that their destiny was to push the world again in the era of injustice and dictatorship, but they are actually a product of the collective problems and evils of all of humanity, which somehow came together and manifested itself to show how massive and drastic its repercussions and consequences are for anyone and everyone without any differences.